Salamun alaikum. Welcome to another video. This video is very interesting because I want to continue to highlight the importance of the Arabic Quranic text and not simply the recitation, because the text that we have is our proof that Allah preserved this text and He divinely protects it. And what is in there, you can be very sure that what you have there is the eternal truth, that nothing else has that level of veracity. This is by no means a conclusive understanding of the following case study, but it serves to show that instead of accusing the Qur'an of having inconsistencies and inaccuracies and everything else that they ascribe the Qur'an lacks, it's better that we hold off those impossibilities and imagine for a second that this is the Creator's ultimate contribution to humanity and jinn kind. So clearly, we have to explain things that we're not even allowed to ask why they are the way they are. So without further ado, let's get right into it. This is the premise I want to present to you today. Years ago, I remember reading these ayahs, in particular, the second one. And I asked myself, I wonder why this spelling of this word from this root doesn't look like the other words from, I would imagine, the same root, because it's given the same general definition. And you can imagine that the explanation of this is so wild and so inconceivable that it makes you question how many people actually truly confide by Allah and this Qur'an. I have to give credit where credit is due, and this article listed on the screen is from a channel called Tartil al-Qur'an. It is in Arabic, so if you don't speak Arabic or read Arabic, you should definitely translate that, because he exposed this a while ago. And what he exposed, essentially, is a deliberate obscuring of the meanings of Arabic words in the Qur'an. And you can imagine that when you lie upon the book of Allah, the consequences are unimaginable. So we ask the question, is it truly that these words belong to the root that they're claimed to? Because they're spelled completely differently. And these are different change in consonants. That's not to do with vowels. Consonants solidify the root every word in Arabic belongs to. The vowels, on the other hand, are more malleable. But the scholars of Islam assure us, even this AI sheikh assures us, that this root belongs to the root ba, sin, ta, which is why there is a sin above the sad. This tells you the word should be pronounced with a sin instead. A scribal error, but orally preserved. And this is the explanation. This is what we're given for Allah's book. Scribal errors, redundance of the text, and It's all memorized anyway. The humans, the mere mortals, are the ones that preserve the Qur'an. Not Allah, nor the angels, but human beings. So, akhi, you see, we orally preserve the Qur'an. This is just very hard to imagine. That human hands have added to Allah's book. This is the mainstream explanation. And this is among many mainstream explanations for many mysteries, apparently, of the text of the Qur'an. So they account that that scene above that sod changes the pronunciation because they assume that for whatever reason, somebody misspelled these words, and so somebody, perhaps hundreds of years later, had to put in the tiny correction above the misspelled letter. How fortunate we are that humans can edit and revise Allah's words. But then I look at other examples, and I don't see the same pattern, because, you see, there are other scenes that don't have this function. Scene letters that are above the words of very different sounding letters, and that have zero impact on the pronunciation, let alone the root of these words. But akhi, that is different, you see. That's a secta. And I can concede that what the current explanation is for this certainly could be deduced as different than what I just showed you. And one of the logical reasons for that is the position of the scene. Given that the scene is above the diacritic marks, and here it's below the diacritic marks. So for once, the AI sheikh might have a point. What they imagine this as is a pause that's held for 2 counts without breathing during recitation, and it's symbolized by the letter sin in many mushafs. This is because they don't believe there is one Qur'an. They believe there's a minimum 7 Qur'ans, and they all agree that this is all one giant conglomerate Qur'an with variations. I'm of the opinion, if you watch this channel, that the Hafs reading of the Qur'an is the only Qur'an, and there are many reasons for that I don't have time to go into. So, clearly, these markings don't always mean that you change the pronunciation of a letter below it in the word, nor does it mean the word is misspelled, nor does it mean that it changes the root of the allegedly misspelled word. And we can see that in this example. So this is a very interesting example to explore and compare, so we can logically deduce why these symbols are in the Qur'an, but at the very least, deduce why the current understanding doesn't make any sense and is simply a coping mechanism for the people that have hijacked and ascribed themselves to the Qur'an. So here you can see there is a meme, a different letter and a different sound that is above the noon in every case listed here when a noon becomes before a ba in the word. A couple of interesting associations. One of which is, this is an example where you pronounce the noon, as far as I understand, as a meme. Anbiya. Mim beni. Okay? However, no one on earth from the Islamic scholarship will dare say that this changes the root of the word from nun ba alif to mim ba alif. And it's interesting too, just as a side, that here we likely have Allah making an association with 2 letters that are paired from the 28 letters in Arabic, namely sin and slad. And that makes a lot of sense that that marking would be there for those. And here, the rule carries from association of 2 paired letters as well, ba and mim. I don't have any evidence to suggest that these letters in the recitation, because the recitation, for many reasons I won't go into, has issues. So obviously can preserve the Qur'an. But the text, that is something that is inimitable. And what you see here is ba and mim being associated over a nun. And these are obvious to see why mim and ba are paired letters, and why sin and slad are paired letters as well. My point is, you don't automatically change the meaning and the root of the word just because you think you have to change the pronunciation if there's a letter over another letter in the word. It's not a misspelling, is my point. Then you get to these examples. Before, the sin letter was underneath the diacritical mark and over the surprisingly, allegedly misspelled word with a slad. But here it's underneath the word. Al-musaytiruna. That's actually pronounced musaytiruna because of the sin. But then I find the word in another ayah in the Qur'an in singular, and there is no sin there. I guess the scribes forgot to correct Allah's book. Astaghfirullah. But the AI Sheikh assures us, Akhi, you are asking too many questions here. All the scholars for 1400 years knew the Arabs have changed the markings. It's all memorized anyway. If it's all memorized, how come nobody brought this to the attention of the ijma'? And how come someone like myself needs to make this video when it should be publicly available in the modern age? All of these confusions and apparent contradictions of the Qur'an given a fair and balanced and logical explanation. So clearly what we're seeing here is what some people say is an erroneous distortion. And I've talked about this group of people before on the channel. These people don't care about the Qur'an. They care about some kind of a code that they need to be in the Qur'an for Allah knows what reason. But clearly, they are willing to blame the Qur'an as it is and create and invoke all kinds of secular historical sources that barely, if not at all, resembles the Qur'an today, allegedly carbon dated to the Prophet's life just after, 100 years after, without any regard for any of the Qur'an. If you watched my videos before, you'll know that this is actually a forgery. The Qur'an we have today, coming from this chicken scratch that was procured by all of the governments that at that time and now have no interest in proving Islam to be true or the Qur'an to be divine in whatever way. And amazingly, these group of occultists actually denigrate the entire Qur'an in the instances where their formula fails, utterly fails. And hence, the erroneous distortion is the Qur'an and not the man-made code that doesn't work across the Qur'an. Similarly, the scribal errors and scribal additions and scribal deletions by human hands is the traditional scholarly Islamic sheikh's version of blaming the Qur'an for what the human being cannot explain today. I just want to highlight this, that both sides of the coin have the same fundamental problem. And that begs the question, how many people truly believe in the Qur'an exactly as it is? I'm not even talking about the meaning. I'm talking about the unadulterated literal text, the words in readable format, which is what Qur'an even means, a reading. So Qur'an corpus actually doubles down, and I'm going to prove to you here that they deliberately hide this and think that you would never come to realize this. You would never see that this deception is in place to hide roots that apparently have no meaning today in Arabic, but they're in the Qur'an, clearly. So let's look at our first example, which is supposed to be in the root ba, sin, la. So this is Qur'an corpus, and this is ba, sin, la. What's so amazing about this is, if you look at those two ayahs we talked about, okay, you're going to notice that on this page, which is supposed to show the actual spelling, they don't show the actual spelling on this page. They show you the spelling of this root, and then they show the other one as if it's part and spelled as the same way. So this is the one that's spelled ba, sin, ta. When I click this, it's ba, sad, ta. Why not be open and just have this exactly how it is? So this root is about extension and stretching, expanding. If there was a word that had a different consonant in that word, that would fundamentally change the meaning of that word. Because like I mentioned before, consonants set the meaning of the word via the root. Let's look at another example. This is the example here, sin, ta, ra. Okay? I'm not here to give a definitive explanation of what the meaning of these roots actually is. But I'm here to show you that there certainly are words that don't belong here, and they're hoping that you wouldn't notice. So like in the last one before, this time they show you the sad. Okay? Only for these two words here. You can see all the other ones are sin, ta, ra. Okay? And it should be very obvious that whatever this means, satara, it has to do with some kind of inscription or recording of some kind of information, graphic representation of some kind of information that becomes tales and stories and writing, written down, and then here's controllers, a controller. It's not even spelled the same way. What's the difference, Sin to slod, same thing, right? Well, when I click this one, this sin is underneath the slod. And you could say, well, the scribe decided to add information to Allah's book, astaghfirullah, and he just wasn't consistent enough. He didn't put it under the fatha, on top of the slod. And you could say, astaghfirullah, that this one forgot to put a sin in there, even though it's supposed to be part of the same root, sin ta ra. You know what's amazing about this is that we have now 3 different ways that this phenomenon presents itself in the Qur'an. On top of the Sod, underneath the Sod, and not in the Sod at all. This one pretty much confirms that there is no way you can put this under the root Sin, Ta, Ra. Which means the other ones that have those scenes in them have to be part of this root. This is the plural of that word which has no sin to pronounce the Sa that way. Which means this sin is a totally different function in the Qur'an. It's not there to play games with you and say, haha, I misspelled this, and now these humans 1,000 years ago are just going to fix it for me. That's not how it works. Let me show you another example. I just show this example to highlight that these people that made this website, that made all the rules for Arabic, its grammar, its root classification, the dictionaries, they've all been tampered with. But by Allah, this Qur'an has not been tampered with, which is why they had to do all the tampering around it. They had to bend and mold your perception of this book so it has eternal consequences and implications for you in this life. This is the root Dhal, Kaf, Ra. Everyone understands this one very well. Dhakara, to remember. Okay, I put it as mention. But basically, it means to remember. If we scroll down a little bit, all the way down, you're going to find something here. All the way down. You're going to find in plain sight words that do not have this dal at all. Muddakir. Muddakir. Not mudhakkir. That's right here. Dal. It's muddakir. Okay? And I'm not going to get into the meanings, but keep in mind, this is a totally different root. Totally different meaning. And they're saying it's from this form, form 8. Let's look at that form, shall we? All the way to the verbs. And look what we find. Ad-dakara. Not ad-dakara. Ad-dakara. Dal, dal. And they say it means to remember. How could it be remember? It's not even the same letter there. The pronunciation shows you that you don't need these little markings to change your pronunciation. Allah just has different roots. Why didn't the scribes put a little dal there to remind us, ironically, that this is ad-dhakara, remembering? Okay? This has implications for the ayah because this is in Surah Yusuf. Minhuma wad-dhakara ba'da ummatin. And there's other problems with this ayah because I don't know how people miss this stuff sometimes, but this word does not mean ummah. This word does not mean period, rather. Excuse me. Ummah does not mean period. Not whatsoever. Nation. It's just nation. That's the whole meaning of it. Anywhere, this is not remember whatsoever. Yet, it's in the dhakara concordance. I mean, this is really something else. Let me show you. Muddakarin will receive admonition. Here it's any who will remember. They're just having a laugh. And if you don't notice, and if you don't put any checks and balances into really connecting with this book in its Arabic, they'll get you to believe whatever they want. They want you to believe about this book. This is why it's so important to stop ignoring the roots and define the words accurately. What I noticed from the article that I mentioned in the beginning, from Tartil al-Qur'an, is that Allah actually uses this root after a different word than He uses the other one. This is a tendency that you can establish in the Qur'an. So, when you look at the root and the words, the verbs for ba, sin, ta, okay? This is what they tell us. This word basata actually belongs to basata, but they misspelled it, okay? This is defined today as extension, and it's contrasted with different ayat with the other word yaqdiru, which means restriction. This is perfectly logical. And you'll find that many times, because this is a popular verb. Basata yaqdiru. Okay? However, the other word, which you can show is a different root altogether, that's related by its paired letter, sin and sad, you can derive that it means dilation. Why? Because when it's used as a verb, it's contrasted with the word for constriction. Like imagine a blood vessel dilating and constricting. Yaqbidu. Okay, you can see it on the screen there. Yaqbidu wa yabsutu. All of the reciters in the world have now changed the meaning by pronouncing it with a sin. Because that sin, there is no evidence that that changes the pronunciation of that word. Yaqbidu wa yabsutu. Whatever Allah decides to define the ultimate meaning of all of His words in the noble Qur'an, the best that we can do is to reason what, to the best of our ability, we can surmise that means, instead of falling back on scholars to tell us, without any evidence whatsoever, what Allah clearly says, disregarding what they tell us those symbols mean. But I want to highlight the real amazing conclusion here. This root is not understood to be a root because of what has been done to the Arabic language. What has been done to the understanding of this Qur'an. It is not existent on Qur'an corpus, in any dictionary, nowhere. That's astonishing. I've looked. If you can find me this root anywhere, without it just automatically saying it comes from ba, sin, ta, I'm all ears. This is your proof that the Qur'an defines the roots. And the dictionaries are just added information. They're just hadith to compare with the Qur'an. And that's why there is no consistency in any translation. I don't care what you can bring me. No translation will literally extract the information there as much as they can so that the Qur'an works exactly as Allah intended to, using the words He meant, because He says what He means and He means what He says. I'm sure there are many things in the Qur'an like this, and believe me, I'm going to tell you a lot of things that have come to light. A lot. So if you're patient, if you endure to the end, you will be rewarded for your sincerity. Unfortunately, this quote-unquote community, and I'm not talking about any specific community, I'm just talking about human beings in general, they seem to have all kinds of extraneous issues at the forefront. When something like this, so pivotal, so embarrassing, is missed. There are a lot of other things that are missed, like I mentioned, and I'm going to save that for a later time. But this is what I wanted to bring you today. And I just want to reiterate, the Qur'an is not redundant. The Qur'an is not imperfect. The Qur'an is not inaccurate. The Qur'an is not imprecise. The Qur'an is not deficient. If you don't agree with those tenets, you should probably look for another video away from this channel. If you agree with those tenets, but you don't apply them, then I'm sorry to say you don't believe in them. Like I mentioned, the spoken Arabic today doesn't have all of the nuances of the Quranic Arabic, because people have learned spoken Arabic today, and you can witness all of the changes through the dialects. And this creates confusion around the Qur'an, because no matter what you see with even modern standard Arabic, you're going to find all kinds of loan words that are not in the Qur'an. You're going to find words that mean definitions, which in the Qur'an are totally different words for a different time, when this book and its language was understood more. For example, take the letter Qaf and its pronunciation. In most Arabic dialects, the Qaf letter is pronounced incorrectly in daily Arabic usage, even though this is the word that the word Qur'an is spelled with. Subhanallah. Levant in Egypt, the Qaf becomes a glottal stop, like the word waqaf for stop is wa'af. In the Gulf region, in Iraq, in North Africa, Qaf becomes a ga. They wouldn't dare pronounce the word Qur'an this way, which means they know how to pronounce the Qaf like they do in modern standard Arabic. But colloquially, you can see the damage that's been done. And this is why we can't trust anything outside of the foundation in the Qur'an to define roots, to find meanings, and to understand the book. Remember, Allah taught the human that which he knew not. The Quranic knowledge is beyond your needs and desires. It's beyond your fashion preferences, your religious tourism, your health and cleanliness, your rituals, your rites and ceremonies, your holidays, your community obligations, your political ideologies. Shaitan's entire plot is to lead humanity to make the same mistake that he made, to be something other than what you're created to be. If you made it this far, thank you for watching this video. Please feel free to take notes and to check anything I've said. And may Allah be with you all. Salam.